Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now, let's begin. I've been driving cross-country for work for the past 8 years. Sales territory that covers half the Midwest, which means a lot of lonely highways and a lot of late nights behind the wheel. You get used to it after a while. The empty roads, the static on the radio, the way small towns just appear out of nowhere and disappear just as fast in your rearview mirror. But there's one night I can't shake. One stop I wish I'd never made. It was somewhere in rural Nebraska, out on Route 20. I'd been driving for hours, pushing through because I had a meeting in the morning and I was already running behind. The fuel light came on around 2 a.m., that little orange glow that sends a spike of anxiety through your chest when you're in the middle of nowhere. I hadn't seen a town, a gas station, hell, even another car for at least 40 miles. Just endless black highway cutting through empty farmland, the kind of darkness that feels heavy, like it's pressing in on you from all sides. I was starting to do the math in my head. How many more miles could I squeeze out of this tank when I finally saw it? A single light in the distance, flickering like a dying firefly. As I got closer, I could make out the shape of a gas station. Old style, the kind that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 70s. The sign was one of those tall pole-mounted ones, but half the letters were burnt out. I could barely make out what it said. Something like Ed's Stop or Red's Shop. The building itself was dark except for one light inside, casting a weak yellow glow through grimy windows. The place looked abandoned, truly abandoned. But the pumps were lit up, bright fluorescent lights humming over them, and I could see the little screens glowing on the card readers. I sat there for a moment, engine idling, debating. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to keep driving. But that fuel light was on, and I had no idea when the next station would appear. I pulled in. The parking lot was cracked asphalt, weeds pushing through everywhere. There were no other cars, no sounds except for my engine and the buzz of those fluorescent lights. And mosquitoes, God, there were mosquitoes everywhere, swarming around that single light over the pumps like something out of a nightmare. I got out and walked to the pump, inserted my card. To my surprise, it worked. The pump beeped, accepted my payment, and told me to select my grade. I started fueling, watching the numbers tick up, trying to ignore the smell. Old gasoline, sure, but underneath that was something else. Something sweet and rotten, like fruit that had been left out in the sun too long. That's when I noticed the convenience store door was propped open. Not just unlocked, actually propped open with a rubber wedge, like someone had stepped out for a second and was coming right back. But there was no one, no attendant behind the counter, no customers, nothing. Just that door, standing open and music playing inside, old country music, the kind my grandfather used to listen to, crackling with static. I needed to use the bathroom, badly. Too much coffee on the road. I called out, "Hello?" a few times while I finished fueling, but there was no response. Just that music, crackling and warbling like it was coming from an old AM radio. I replaced the nozzle and walked toward the store, stopping at the doorway. Called out again, "Hello, anyone here?" Nothing. I stepped inside. The place was like a time capsule. Everything looked decades old. The shelving, the ancient cash register, the faded posters on the walls advertising cigarette brands I didn't even recognize. But it was clean. Weirdly, unnaturally clean. The floor was swept, the shelves were organized, and those fluorescent lights overhead were humming that electrical buzz that makes your teeth ache. The bathroom was in the back corner. I could see it from where I stood. Door half open, light on inside. I walked toward it, my footsteps echoing on the linoleum. That's when I noticed the security monitor behind the counter. Old CRT screen, the kind that's probably worth something to collectors now. It was on, showing multiple camera angles in a grid pattern, different views of the store, the parking lot, the pumps, and one pointed at the bathroom door. I stopped walking, stopped breathing maybe. On that monitor, clear as day, there was a figure standing in the bathroom, completely still, facing the wall like they were using the urinal or something, except they weren't moving at all, just standing there, frozen. I looked at the actual bathroom. The door was open. The light was on. From where I stood, I couldn't see anyone inside, couldn't see far enough in at this angle. I looked back at the monitor. The figure on the screen turned. Slowly, deliberately, turned to face the camera. I couldn't make out the face. It was obscured somehow, blurred or shadowed, but I could see the body language. They were looking directly at the camera, looking at me. The monitor flickered. Static washed across the screen for a second, then came back. The figure was gone from the bathroom angle. All the other camera views showed empty spaces. And then I heard it. Footsteps from the bathroom. Slow, deliberate, heavy footsteps on tile. I backed toward the exit, my eyes locked on that bathroom doorway. Couldn't look away, couldn't blink. Something shifted in the darkness beyond the bathroom door. A shadow, a shape, something moving just out of the light. I ran to my car, with my heart hammering so hard I thought it would burst. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely get the gas cap back on, but I managed. Threw myself into the driver's seat, slammed the locks down. I looked back at the store. The bathroom light was off now. I know it had been on. I'd seen it on 30 seconds ago, and the front door, the one that had been propped open, was closed now, shut tight. Then I saw it, in the window of the store, pressed against the glass. A face, pale, features indistinct in the weak light, but definitely a face. And it was watching me. I didn't wait. Peeled out of that parking lot, tires screaming, and didn't slow down for miles. I watched the rearview mirror the whole time, watched that gas station recede into the distance. As I watched, every single light in the place went dark at once. The pumps, the sign, the interior, everything. 1 second it was lit up, the next it was gone, swallowed by the darkness like it had never been there at all. My hands didn't stop shaking for 20 miles. When I got to my hotel that night, I tried to look up the gas station, searched every map, every database. That stretch of Route 20 shows no gas stations for 60 miles in either direction. There's nothing there. Nothing on Google Maps, nothing on any travel sites, nothing. But I have the receipt. I kept it. Checked my credit card statement when it came through. The charge is there, but the station name that printed on the receipt doesn't exist in any database I can find. It's just a string of numbers and letters that don't match any known business. I've driven that route 6 times since then. Same highway, same time of night even, once. I've never seen that station again. Never seen that flickering sign or those bright fluorescent lights over the pumps. But sometimes, late at night when I'm driving through Nebraska, I wonder if it's still there. Still waiting. Still watching for the next person desperate enough to stop. And I wonder what would have happened if I'd walked into that bathroom, if I'd gone just a few feet further. I wonder who or what was standing there in the dark, waiting for me. If you're still listening, you probably enjoy stories like this. A like or a comment helps keep them alive. I want to tell you about a town I can't find on any map. A place that shouldn't exist, but I drove through it 3 times in one night. And I'm not talking about getting turned around and accidentally circling back. I mean something else. Something impossible. This happened in Montana, about 2 years ago. I was taking a scenic route to avoid some construction on the interstate, following one of those state highways that cuts through the mountains. Beautiful country during the day, all pine forests and dramatic peaks. But as the sun started going down, it got dark fast. My GPS lost signal maybe 20 miles back, not unusual in the mountains. I was following road signs, figuring I'd hit the interstate eventually. That's when I saw the town. It appeared suddenly, the way small towns do on these rural highways. 1 minute you're surrounded by forest, the next you're on a main street with buildings on either side. There was a blinking stoplight, one of those old-fashioned ones that hangs over the intersection on a wire. Maybe 40 buildings total, all old-style American small-town architecture. A post office, a diner, a hardware store, a church at the far end. The sign said, Millbrook, population 347, founded 1891. It was around 6 in the evening, still light enough to see clearly. And that's when I noticed something was wrong. There were no people, anywhere. Every building had lights on inside. The diner had its open sign lit up in the window. The hardware store's door was propped open. Cars were parked along the street in neat rows, but there wasn't a single person visible anywhere. I slowed down, looking left and right as I drove through. The town felt staged, like a movie set between takes. Everything was in place, but there were no actors. Then I noticed the mannequins in the storefront windows. Every shop had them, which isn't that unusual, but they were all positioned facing the street, all of them. Standing at the windows, facing out like they were watching the road. It made my skin crawl. I sped up, eager to get through, to leave this weird, empty place behind. The town was maybe half a mile long. I reached the other end, saw the speed limit sign change back to 65, and I was back on the open highway with forest on both sides. I drove for about 30 minutes, trying to shake off that weird feeling. Told myself it was probably just a dying town, everyone working somewhere else, buildings maintained but nobody actually living there. It happens. Then I saw lights ahead, another town, same layout, same blinking stoplight, same buildings. My stomach dropped as I got closer and saw the sign, Welcome to Millbrook, population 347. It was the same town, the exact same town, same church at the end, same diner with the open sign, same hardware store with its door propped open. I'd been driving in a straight line. No turns, no loops, just following the highway. This wasn't possible. I drove through again, faster this time, my hands gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles went white. I looked at the mannequins in the windows. They were still facing the street, but now I could swear they'd turned slightly, like they were tracking my car as I passed. I told myself I was seeing things, stress, exhaustion, the weird light at dusk playing tricks. I focused on the road ahead and drove. An hour later, I saw the sign again. Millbrook, founded 1891. This time, there were people. They were standing in the street, evenly spaced across both lanes, maybe 10 feet apart. 7 of them, I think. All wearing dark clothing, old-fashioned looking. Long coats, hats. I couldn't make out their faces clearly in my headlights, just silhouettes. I slowed to a stop about 20 feet away. My engine was the only sound. No wind, no insects, nothing. I honked my horn. They didn't react, didn't move, didn't turn their heads. Just stood there, perfectly still. I honked again, longer this time. All 7 of them turned their heads toward me in perfect unison. The movement was too fast, too synchronized. Identical, like puppets on the same string. I still couldn't see their faces. The headlights should have illuminated them, but somehow their features stayed in shadow. The person in the center, the one directly in front of my car, slowly raised their arm and pointed to the side of the road. I followed the gesture and saw something I hadn't noticed before. A gap in the trees. A dirt road leading into the forest, barely visible. The message was clear. Take that road. I sat there, engine running, for maybe 5 minutes. They didn't move, didn't lower their arms, just stood there, waiting. I couldn't drive through them. I couldn't back up. There was something about turning my back on them that felt even worse, and I couldn't sit there forever. So I turned onto the dirt road. The trees closed in immediately, branches scraping the roof of my car with sounds like fingernails on metal. The road was narrow, winding, barely more than 2 tracks through the forest. I drove for what felt like 30 minutes, maybe more, following those tracks deeper and deeper into the woods. No signs, no lights, no indication where this road went or when it would end. Then, suddenly, I broke through the trees into an open area, and there was a highway, a real highway, 4 lanes, well maintained with proper lane markings and reflectors. A green sign told me I was on Interstate 81, next exit 12 miles. I knew that highway. It was the main route I'd been trying to avoid. Somehow that dirt road had brought me back to it. I pulled onto the interstate and just drove in stunned silence. Checked the time on my dashboard. 11:07 p.m. I'd entered that first version of Millbrook at 6:15 p.m. I'd lost almost 5 hours, and my gas tank was nearly empty. It had been 3/4 full when I entered Millbrook the first time. Where had I been driving? How far had I gone? I made it to the next town, a normal town, with people and lights and a proper 24-hour truck stop. I filled up, hands still shaking, and asked the cashier if he knew anything about Millbrook. The guy went pale, actually took a step back from the counter. "You came from there?" he asked. "From Millbrook." I nodded. He pulled out a highway map from under the counter, one of those old paper ones, and spread it out. Found the area I'd been driving through and pointed to a spot marked with a small X. "Millbrook burned down in 1983, he said. "Whole town. Gas explosion, they said, but it took everything. Every building, every person, everyone died. It's just empty land now. State bought it. It's marked as a historic site. No services, no nothing." I stared at the map. The X was right where I'd been, where I'd driven through 3 times. "Other people have said the same thing," he continued, his voice quiet. "Usually around this time of year. They drive through Millbrook, some of them circle it for hours. No one knows why it happens. No one knows what it is." I looked at the date on my phone. October 17th. I searched for Millbrook later. Found a newspaper article from October 17th, 1983. The fire had happened late in the evening. The whole town had been celebrating something, a harvest festival, the article said. Everyone was gathered in the town center when the explosion happened. The entire population of 347 people died. That was 40 years ago, almost to the day when I drove through. I never took that route again. I drive the long way, the interstate, even if it adds hours to my trip. But sometimes, when I'm driving through Montana on I-81, I see lights in the distance, a cluster of them right where Millbrook used to be, right where the map says there's nothing. I know better than to investigate. I know better than to try to find that dirt road again. But I still have the dirt from that road on my floor mats. I've tried to clean it out, vacuum it, scrub it. It won't come out. It's still there, ground into the carpet. Dark dirt that smells like smoke. I can't explain that, and I've stopped trying to. Some places carry their history with them. Some rooms remember what happened inside them, and they keep replaying it over and over for anyone unlucky enough to be there at the right time, or the wrong time, depending on how you look at it. I learned this at a motel in Kentucky. It was a place called the Pinewood Motor Lodge, one of those classic 1960s-style roadside motels. Single story, parking directly outside your room, office at one end with a neon sign that buzzed loud enough to hear from the parking lot. The kind of place that shows up in old road trip photos and probably looked charming once, back when it was new. I pulled in around 10 at night. There was a storm rolling in, the kind of late summer thunderstorm that turns the sky green and makes the air feel electric. I'd been driving all day and I was exhausted. The Pinewood had a vacancy sign lit up, and that was good enough for me. The guy at the front desk was older, maybe 70s, friendly enough but tired-looking. He barely glanced at my ID, took my card, and handed me a key attached to a diamond-shaped plastic tag. "Room 7, he said. "End of the building, nice and quiet. Just had it refreshed recently." I thanked him and headed down the covered walkway to the last room. As I walked, I felt him watching me. I looked back once, and he was standing in the doorway of the office, just staring. Not in a creepy way, exactly. More like concerned. But when I met his eyes, he went back inside. Room 7 looked like every other budget motel room I'd ever stayed in. Generic landscape painting on the wall, dated floral bedspread, TV bolted to the dresser, bathroom visible through an open door. Clean enough. Nothing special. I dropped my bag and went to close the curtains. That's when I noticed the bathroom light was on. I didn't remember the clerk mentioning that, but housekeeping probably just left it on. I was unpacking when I heard something from the bathroom. A sound like something sliding across the tile floor, quick, subtle, but definitely there. I stopped moving. Listened. Nothing. Just the hum of the air conditioning unit and the distant rumble of thunder. I went to check the bathroom. Looked around. Everything was normal. Toilet, sink, shower with a yellowed plastic curtain pulled to one side. The light was still on. Nothing out of place. I returned to unpacking, trying to shake off the weird feeling. 10 minutes later, I heard it again. The same sound, something scraping across tile. And then, underneath it, something else. Breathing. Quiet, but definitely breathing. I stood at the bathroom doorway, my hand on the frame, listening hard. The breathing stopped the instant I stopped moving, like whatever it was knew I was paying attention. I flipped the light switch off and on a few times. Nothing changed. The light stayed on, bright fluorescent white, casting harsh shadows. I grabbed my phone, opened the camera, and walked into the bathroom. I've heard that cameras can sometimes pick up things that the naked eye can't. I don't know if I believe that, but I was willing to try anything. I held up the phone, watching the screen as I slowly panned around the bathroom. On the screen, in the reflection mode, I saw something that wasn't there in reality. A shadow in the corner where the shower met the wall. A dark, person-shaped shadow that didn't correspond to any object in the room. I spun around to look at the actual corner. Nothing. Empty. I looked back at the phone screen. The shadow was still there, and as I watched, it moved. Slightly. A subtle shift like someone taking a shallow breath. I backed out of the bathroom and sat on the bed, phone clutched in my hand, staring at that doorway. My mouth was dry. My heart was pounding. Around midnight, the bathroom light started flickering. Not randomly, in a pattern. I counted. 3 long flickers, then 3 short, then 3 long again. SOS. Someone was trying to signal for help. From inside my bathroom, I stood up, grabbed my keys. I was leaving. I didn't care if I'd already paid. I was not staying in this room. I went to the door, turned the handle. The door wouldn't open. The handle turned fine. The mechanism worked, but the door itself wouldn't budge. It felt stuck, like something was holding it from the outside. I pulled harder, putting my full weight into it. Nothing. Then suddenly, the door gave way so fast I stumbled backward and nearly fell. I caught myself and looked back into the room. The bathroom light was off now. I knew it had been on 3 seconds ago. I'd been looking right at it. In the darkness of the bathroom, just barely visible, something was standing in the doorway. Tall, wrong proportions, arms too long or legs too short, I couldn't tell. Just a silhouette, darker than the surrounding darkness. It took one step forward into the room. The floorboards creaked under its weight. I ran, sprinted down the walkway to the office, pounding on the door. The old man came out, looking annoyed. "There's someone in my room," I said, out of breath. "In room 7, there's someone in there." His expression changed instantly. The annoyance vanished, replaced by something I couldn't read. Fear, maybe, or resignation. "You were in room 7? He asked. "Yes. You gave me the key an hour ago." He looked at the key in my hand, the diamond-shaped plastic tag with the number 7 stamped on it. "I gave you room 11, he said quietly. "I always skip 7. I never rent 7 anymore." I stared at him. "You literally handed me this key. I watched you take it off the hook." He shook his head. "The key to 7 isn't even on the hook. It's locked in the back. Has been for 2 years." We both looked toward the room. The door was wide open now, swaying slightly in the wind from the storm. The bathroom light inside was strobing, rapid, chaotic flashing. "Come on," he said. "I'll give you a different room. Won't charge. You extra." He set me up in room 12 on the other side of the building. Didn't offer any explanation. Didn't want to talk about it. I didn't sleep. Couldn't. Every sound made me jump. Every shadow looked like it might move. In the morning, a different person was at the desk. A younger woman, maybe the owner's daughter. I asked her about room 7 as I checked out. She sighed like she'd answered this question before. "Room's been closed since 2019. A guest died in there. Suicide. Locked themselves in the bathroom before anyone could help. But before they did it, they carved something into the wall. 3 letters, over and over. SOS. They wanted help. They were asking for help. But no one came in time." She paused, then added, "We painted over it, tried renting the room again. But guests kept complaining, said they felt like they weren't alone, said the bathroom light wouldn't turn off, said they heard things, so we stopped renting it." I checked out and loaded my car. As I was pulling out of the parking lot, I looked back at the motel. There was a figure in the window of room 7, just standing there, watching me leave. The clerk never asked for the key back. I still have it in my glove box. Room 7, Pinewood Motor Lodge. I can't bring myself to throw it away, and I can't explain why. Maybe because I feel like throwing it away would be like abandoning whoever, or whatever, is still in that room, still signaling for help that's never going to come. Sometimes I think about driving back there, knocking on that door, asking what they need, but I'm afraid of what might answer. There are places that exist outside of normal time and logic. Places that shouldn't know you, but somehow they do. They've been waiting for you, even though you've never been there before in your life. I found one of these places on a highway in Texas at 3 in the morning when I was so exhausted I was starting to see things in my peripheral vision. The diner appeared out of nowhere. Classic neon sign, the kind with the arrow and the cursive script that read, "Rosie's Diner, open 24 hours. The building itself looked like it had been preserved from the 1950s. Red and white exterior, chrome trim, big windows showing red vinyl booths inside. A couple of cars in the parking lot, including an old pickup truck that looked like it hadn't moved in years. I needed coffee desperately. Maybe some food. Something to keep me awake for the last 100 miles of my drive. So I pulled in. The bell above the door chimed as I walked inside. The place smelled like coffee and bacon grease and something else underneath, something chemical, like cleaning products or preservatives. A waitress appeared immediately. Older woman, maybe 60, wearing a classic diner uniform with a name tag that said Betty. She smiled at me in a way that made my skin prickle. "Evening, sweetheart," she said. "Your usual booth?" I stopped. "Excuse me?" "Your usual booth," she repeated, still smiling. "In the back corner, that's where you always sit." "I've never been here before," I said. Her smile didn't waver. "Of course, honey. My mistake. Come on, I'll show you to a seat." She led me to a booth in the back corner, anyway. A specific booth. The table already had a menu on it, open to a specific page. I sat down, increasingly uncomfortable. There was one other customer in the diner, an old man in a corner booth, wearing a flannel shirt and a trucker cap. He was staring at me. Not glancing, not looking. Staring. Behind the counter, through the serving window, I could see the cook. He was also staring at me. "Can I get you some coffee?" Betty asked. "Yes, please. Black with 2 sugars and a splash of cream," she finished. "I know how you take it, sweetheart." My blood went cold. I take my coffee exactly that way. I always have. But I'd never told her. I'd never been to this diner in my entire life. She came back 2 minutes later with the coffee. It was perfect. Exactly how I like it. Exactly the right amount of sugar and cream. "You want your usual?" she asked, pulling out her order pad. "Number 7 with hash browns? Eggs over easy." That is what I always order at diners. Always. It's been my standard breakfast for dinner order since I was a teenager. But I'd never said it out loud. I'd never ordered anything. "I'll just have the coffee," I managed to say. Her smile faded. Just slightly. The warmth left her eyes. "You always get number 7, she said quietly. "You should stick to the usual. It's better that way." "I'm sorry, I think you're confusing me with someone else," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She leaned in closer. I could smell her perfume, old-fashioned, floral, way too strong. "We've been waiting for you to come back," she said. "It's been a long time. We thought you forgot about us." "I've never been here before," I insisted. She straightened up and pointed to the wall behind me. "Look." I turned. The wall was covered in photographs. Old pictures of the diner through the decades. Black and white photos from the 50s and 60s, color photos from the 70s and 80s, more recent ones from the 90s and 2000s. Betty pointed to one from what looked like the early 90s, showed the interior of the diner, a booth with someone sitting in it. I couldn't make out the face clearly. The photo was slightly out of focus, but the person was wearing a jacket, a very specific jacket, brown leather with a distinctive patch on the shoulder. A vintage piece, one of a kind. I owned that exact jacket. I was wearing it right then. I'd inherited it from my father. "That's not possible," I whispered. The cook came out from the kitchen. He was a big guy, probably 6'4", wearing a stained white apron. He walked slowly toward my booth. "You said you'd come back," he said. His voice was deep, emotionless. "You promised." The old man in the corner booth finally spoke. "Some people forget, but we don't. We've been here the whole time. Waiting." I stood up, threw a $20 bill on the table. "I need to go." Betty grabbed my wrist. Her grip was ice cold, impossibly strong. Her smile was gone completely now. "You can't leave again," she said. "Not this time. You promised you'd come back. You promised you'd stay." I yanked my arm free and ran for the door, pulled on the handle. It wouldn't budge. The door was locked, even though there was no lock visible. They were all moving toward me now. Betty, the cook, the old man. Slow, deliberate steps. Their faces were emotionless, blank. The jukebox in the corner suddenly started playing. I hadn't noticed it before. An old country song, something familiar. It took me a second to place it. It was my father's favorite song, the song we played at his funeral 8 years ago. I looked at the reflection in the glass door, and in that reflection, I saw someone sitting in my booth, the back corner booth. Someone wearing that same jacket, the same build as me. But the face was wrong. The features were shifting, blurry, like a photograph that had been water damaged. I pulled on the door again with everything I had. My hands were sweating. My heart was hammering. They were getting closer. The door suddenly gave way. I fell out into the parking lot, scrambled to my feet, and ran to my car. I drove 3 hours straight without stopping. Didn't slow down, didn't look back, didn't even breathe normally until the sun started coming up and I saw normal highway signs for normal towns with normal names. Pulled over at a rest stop as dawn broke. Sat there shaking, trying to process what had happened. My phone showed 3 missed calls, all from an unknown number, all from the time I was in the diner. I had 1 voicemail. I shouldn't have listened to it. I wish I hadn't. But I did. The voice on the recording was mine, distant, distorted, like it was coming from far away or through water. It said, "Don't come back. I'm still there. I never left." I deleted the voicemail immediately. Blocked the number. Later, I searched for Rosie's diner online. Found an obituary for Rose Martinez, who owned a diner in that area. She died in 1987. The diner was closed shortly after. Property was sold. Building was supposed to be demolished. But on Yelp, there are recent reviews. Dozens of them. All 1 star. All saying the same things. They kept insisting I'd been there before. The waitress knew my name and I never told her. They kept calling me by someone else's name. "Don't stop here. They don't want you to leave." I found a better version of that photograph online, posted on a local history website, the one from inside the diner, the person in the booth wearing my jacket. I zoomed in on the face. It was my father, sitting in that booth, wearing that jacket. The photo was dated 1993. My father died in 2017. This photo was taken 24 years before his death. I don't know what that diner is. I don't know what those people were or what they wanted from me. I don't know why my father was there or why they were waiting for me. All I know is that somewhere in rural Texas, there's a diner that exists outside of time, where the same people serve the same meals to the same customers over and over again, forever. And they're still waiting for me to come back. The last story I want to tell you is about the time I got lost on a highway that doesn't exist. Or it exists, but it shouldn't. Or it existed once, and somehow I found my way onto it even though it's been closed for 50 years. I don't know which one is true. All I know is that I lost 4 hours and nearly a quarter tank of gas driving in circles through a stretch of road that leads nowhere and never ends. This happened in Virginia, in the mountains. I was taking back roads, trying to save time by cutting through the rural areas instead of taking the interstate. My GPS had been glitchy all day, losing signal, freezing, giving me weird directions, but I figured I could navigate by road signs. The route seemed straightforward enough. 2-lane highway cutting through dense forest, no major turns, just following the road until it connected with another highway that would take me where I needed to go. I passed a landmark around 7 in the evening, just as the sun was starting to set. An old barn, bright red paint faded to rust with a collapsed roof. Next to it was a metal silo, listing to one side like it might fall over any minute. It was distinctive. The kind of thing you notice and remember. 20 minutes later, I passed it again. The exact same barn, same damage, same silo, same position relative to the road. I told myself there must be 2 similar barns in the area. Rural Virginia is full of old farms. Coincidences happen, but I felt uneasy. I kept driving, paying closer attention now, watching for mile markers, distinctive trees, anything that would help me track where I was going. I passed mile marker 47, noted it specifically, kept driving. 15 minutes later should have been at least mile 60, probably further. The next marker I saw was 47 again. The same marker, I was certain of it. Same dent in the post, same faded paint. I pulled over onto the shoulder, engine running, and checked my GPS. The screen was frozen on a loading icon, that little spinning circle that just kept going and going. My phone showed no service, no bars at all. I sat there for a moment, trying to decide what to do. The logical thing was to keep driving forward. Eventually I'd hit something, a town, an intersection, another highway. I couldn't just loop forever. So I continued, drove more carefully now, watching everything. The light was fading fast, that brief window between sunset and full dark, where everything looks gray and flat. I passed the barn again. This time there was something new. A car parked next to it. A sedan, modern, maybe 5 years old. Dark color, hard to tell exactly in the fading light. The car hadn't been there the first 2 times I'd passed. I was certain of it. I slowed down, considering whether to stop. The car appeared empty, but as I got closer, I saw movement inside the barn. Just a shadow shifting in the darkness beyond the collapsed roof. Something about it made my skin crawl. I accelerated, leaving the barn behind. 15 minutes later, I passed it again. The car was gone. But now there were 3 figures standing in the road ahead. Right in the middle of both lanes, evenly spaced across the highway. I could see them in my headlights as I approached, silhouettes against the darkening sky. They were wearing dark clothing, hoods or hats that obscured their features. They weren't moving, just standing there, blocking the road. I slowed to a stop about 20 feet away, left the engine running. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tight my fingers ached. I honked. No response. They didn't even turn their heads. I honked again, longer this time, laying on the horn. All 3 of them turned to look at me in perfect unison. The movement was too fast, too synchronized. Identical timing, like they were connected somehow. I still couldn't see their faces. My headlights were pointing right at them, but somehow their features stayed in shadow. The figure in the center raised its arm slowly, pointing to the side of the road. I followed the gesture and saw a gap in the trees I hadn't noticed before. A dirt road, narrow and overgrown, leading into the forest. The message was clear. Take that road. I sat there for 5 full minutes, engine idling, watching them. They didn't move, didn't lower their arms, just stood there, waiting. I couldn't drive through them. I couldn't back up. Something about the idea of turning around, of putting them behind me where I couldn't see them, was worse than staying put, and I couldn't just sit there all night. I didn't have a choice. I turned onto the dirt road. The trees closed in immediately, branches scraping against the car with sounds like fingernails on metal. The road was barely more than 2 tire tracks through dense forest, winding and uneven. My headlights only penetrated about 20 feet ahead before being swallowed by the darkness. I drove for what felt like 30 minutes. Maybe more. No signs, no markers, no indication of where this road led or when it would end. Just endless forest, pressing in from all sides. The road twisted and turned, forcing me to drive slowly. Every few minutes I'd see something in the trees, movement in my peripheral vision, shapes that didn't quite look like trees or animals, but when I'd look directly, there was nothing. I was starting to panic, considering just stopping the car and waiting for daylight, when suddenly the trees opened up. I burst out into a clearing, and there was a highway. A real, paved, 4-lane highway with proper lane markings, reflectors, and road signs. A green sign told me I was on Interstate 81, next exit 12 miles. I nearly cried with relief. I knew I-81. I knew where I was now. This was the main highway I'd been trying to avoid because of construction, but I didn't care anymore. I just wanted to be on a normal road with normal traffic and normal rules. I pulled onto the interstate and drove. It was empty. Not unusual for this time of night in rural Virginia, but the emptiness felt comforting instead of threatening. Normal emptiness, not the suffocating isolation of that looping highway. I checked the time in my dashboard, 11:23 p.m. I'd entered that first stretch of highway, where I first saw the barn, around 7 p.m. I'd lost over 4 hours. I looked at my fuel gauge. Nearly empty. It had been 3/4 full when I started. Where had I been driving? How many miles had I covered? I made it to Winchester, the town I'd been heading for all along, and pulled into the first gas station I found. My hands were still shaking as I filled the tank. Inside, I asked the attendant if he knew about the highway I'd been on. Tried to describe it. The 2-lane road, the old barn, the way it seemed to loop. He looked at me strangely. What road? There's no highway like that around here. Not anymore. It was there, I insisted. I just came from it. He pulled out a map from behind the counter, one of those detailed state maps, and asked me to show him where I'd been. I traced the route I'd taken, the detour I'd meant to follow. His expression changed as he looked at where I was pointing. That road's been closed since 1974, he said quietly. It's not even on current maps. They shut it down after some accidents. The state condemned it. It's supposed to be barricaded. I stared at the map. The road was there, printed in gray instead of black, with a note. Historic route. Closed, no access. How did I get on it? I asked. He shook his head. I don't know. But you're not the first person to say this. Every few months, someone comes in here with the same story. They got lost on a highway that doesn't exist. They drove in circles. They saw the same landmarks over and over. Usually they mention an old barn. He paused, then added, some of them say they saw people standing in the road, pointing them toward a dirt path. My mouth went dry. What happens to people who follow that path? Most of them end up here eventually. On I-81 like you did. They can't explain how they got out. They just end up here. Most of them. He didn't answer. Just looked at me with something like pity. I left the gas station and found a hotel. Didn't sleep. Couldn't stop thinking about what he'd said. Most of them. In the morning, I tried to plot the route I'd taken on my phone. Used every mapping service I could find. The highway I'd been on didn't appear on any current map, but I found a historical map from the 1960s in a library database. The road was there. It was labeled Route 34 Mountain Crossing. There was a note next to it, closed 1974, multiple fatal accidents, unsafe conditions. I searched for more information, found a few newspaper articles from the 70s. The road had been the site of dozens of accidents over the years. People would crash into trees, go off embankments, just disappear entirely. The state finally closed it after a particularly bad accident in 1974 where an entire family vanished. Their car was found on the side of the road, engine still running, doors open. They were never found. I kept searching and found something that made my blood run cold. A local forum, mostly dead, with a thread titled, "Has anyone else gotten stuck on the loop?" The most recent post was from 3 months ago. I drove that road last night. Same barn, same mile markers, couldn't get out. Finally saw people in the road and they pointed to a dirt path. I followed it and ended up on I-81, but I lost 6 hours. My gas tank was empty, and when I checked my dashcam footage, there's nothing. Just static for 6 hours, like I wasn't anywhere at all. There were dozens of similar posts going back years. Most people lost a few hours. Some lost a whole night. One person claimed they lost 2 days, went onto the road on a Friday evening, and came out Sunday morning with no memory of what happened in between. and one post, the oldest in the thread, from 2008. My brother took that road in 2006. He called me from somewhere on it, said he was lost, said the same barn kept appearing. He said there were people in the road. That was the last time I heard from him. His car was found 3 weeks later on Route 34, even though that road has been closed for 30 years. He wasn't in it. They never found him. If anyone reading this sees people on that road, don't follow them. Don't take the dirt path. My brother did, and he never came back. I closed my laptop, sat there in the hotel room with my heart pounding. I'd followed the dirt path. I'd done exactly what that person warned against. But I'd made it out. I'd ended up on I-81, found a normal town, been able to drive away. But I kept thinking about what the gas station attendant had said. Most of them end up here eventually. Most, not all. What happened to the others? Where did that dirt road really go? Why did I make it out when others didn't? I don't have answers. All I know is that somewhere in rural Virginia, there's a highway that shouldn't exist, a road that's been closed for 50 years, but still appears for some people, under certain conditions. A loop that captures you and doesn't let go, that makes you drive the same stretch over and over until you're desperate enough to take the only exit it offers. And sometimes that exit leads back to the real world, but sometimes it doesn't. I still have questions I can't answer. Why was my dashcam footage corrupted? Just 6 hours of static? Why doesn't my GPS show any route history for that time? Why did my phone's battery drain completely, even though I barely used it? And why, 2 weeks after I got home, did I receive a call from my own number? I didn't answer. I was too afraid of what voice might be on the other end. My voice, maybe, calling from that highway, still driving in circles, still looking for a way out. The voicemail it left was just static. 6 seconds of static, then the line went dead. I changed my number after that. But sometimes, late at night, I wonder if there's a version of me still on that highway, still passing that barn over and over, still seeing those figures in the road, still following that dirt path deeper into the forest, never finding the way out. I wonder how many versions of how many people are trapped there, how many took that path and never made it back. And I wonder what's waiting at the end of that dirt road, what those figures are leading people toward. I don't think I want to know, but I can't stop thinking about it. I still drive for work, still take those long, lonely highways through rural America. But I'm more careful now. I check maps obsessively. I avoid detours. I never, ever follow a dirt road unless I know exactly where it leads, because I've learned that there are places out there, places that don't follow our rules, that exist in their own twisted logic, places that remember, places that wait. And sometimes those places find you. The gas station in Nebraska, the town in Montana that burned 40 years ago, the motel room in Kentucky where someone died asking for help, the diner in Texas that exists outside of time, the highway in Virginia that loops forever. They're all still out there, still waiting for the next person who's desperate enough or unlucky enough to stop. I keep the evidence in my glove box, the receipt from the gas station, the key from room 7, a photo I took of that barn on the Virginia highway. They're real. I have proof these places existed, at least for me, at least for a little while. But I can't find them again, and I'm not sure I want to. If you're still listening, if you made it this far, then you probably understand. You probably know what it's like to encounter something that doesn't make sense, that shouldn't be possible, but is. Maybe you've got your own stories, your own strange encounters on lonely roads, your own places that knew too much or felt too wrong. If you do, I believe you, because I've been there too. Thanks for listening. And remember, if you're ever driving through a small town and something feels wrong, if a place seems too empty or too familiar, or people know things they shouldn't, trust that feeling. Keep driving, don't stop, don't look back, because some roads don't lead where you think they do. and some towns don't want you to leave.